Drew Petzing is joining us out here. Drew, thanks for the time, man. How's it going?
Good, really good. Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
Drew, where are you going to start? When you start talking about your offense coming up in 2025, where are you going to start on that? Where does your mind go?
I think you always kind of pick up, the pieces of where you left off, right? What you were good at, what you weren't good at. I mean, that's one of the first things you do in the offseason is kind of go back and break it down and watch it in detail and try to figure out, what your players did well, what the scheme, really did well, what people tried to do to you defensively. So I think that's kind of the starting point, and then it kind of changes and tweaks as you watch things around the league. You watch a lot of college tape throughout the evaluation process, but you certainly pick up scheme there. So my offense, our offense, whatever we want to call it, I think it's always evolving, and I think that's always got to be the case.
The defense added so many pieces, and we've talked to a few offensive guys already this offseason. Paris Johnson Jr., Greg Dortch, guys that sat in that chair, and they were like, well, one of the things we like about the offense is we all know each other. Like, there's accountability. It's quick. Like, we don't have to kind of get to know the guy next to us. How much does that make your job easier?
In a major way. I think, as they said, not only not having to know the guy, but there's a lot of nonverbal communication that can happen throughout a football game, throughout, in and out of the huddle on the sideline. And so when you get guys that you really understand where they're at, what they're thinking, what they're doing, I think it allows guys to play together at a high level.
So, Drew, are we going to be more physical or less physical?
Always more physical. We'll put
more
that on
physical.
Always.
Okay, so
always,
you're not backing away from 12 personnel. You're not going to do that. 13 personnel as well. You're not going to do. We're still going to go out there and try to bash your face in.
6
right?
fullbacks, everything.
I think, and people think of that and think, oh, you have to run the ball to be physical. And I don't view it that way in any way, shape, or form. I mean, run actions, keep like everything we do, the way we run with the ball in our hand. James Conner's just as violent when he catches it as when he runs. When we hand it to him. I think it's an attitude and a mentality of a team, not necessarily the way that I call it or the way that we run the offense.
I think the offensive line would disagree with you. I think the offensive line would say, we want to come off the ball and we want to bash somebody's face in.
But they like putting a little bit of indecision in that defensive lineman's mind on whether or not they're defending the run of the pass.
Yeah, that's true. That's going to help them in pass protection.
We're talking to Drew Petzing. Drew, you're probably really the guy to ask this question that I've heard brought up so many times in the last 8-9 months. Marvin Harrison Jr. as a rookie, he comes in with these absurd expectations. People look and you're like, okay, well, he wasn't the greatest receiver in the history of the game in his first year. But then you look at his numbers; he had pretty good numbers by the end of the year. So when you look at what he did last year and what you're hoping to get from him this year, what jumps out to you?
I think you hit on the first thing. Like I was very pleased with the year he had. I mean, almost 900 yards, 8 touchdowns. He had a big impact on our offense. I thought he picked it up really well. The transition to the NFL game was strong. And then I think it's kind of the message that we sell to every player in that room is we need to get better. I need to call better plays. He needs to improve at some things. We want to have those conversations. Our goal is for all of us to hit our ceilings and whatever our roles are. So I think he's embraced that, just the way he works and the way he thinks and learns the game. So that's good. That's the next step. It's, hey, you did a really good job. Let's see how we can get better, how I can use you better in the offense, how you can improve in terms of certain situations. That's kind of been the focus this offseason.
So when I look at Marvin Harrison Jr., this is just me, Drew, looking at him from the outside in as a fullback, okay?
I didn't know you played fullback.
No, of course, exactly. As a fullback, Drew, me looking at him. But I would like to see him attack the ball when it's in the air more. I would like to see him adopt an attitude that says, that ball is mine. Now, again, a lot of people talking about contested catches and everything else. I'm talking about high-pointing the ball and going back, using his height to his advantage, going back and attacking the ball more. Would you agree with that? Would you like to see him do that?
Absolutely. I think we ask that of everybody in that room. I think, we have some big players, not just him, but we have some bigger receivers in that room that size is a major advantage. There's not a lot of 6'2", 215-pound DBs out there. So using your body, attacking the football, using your length, and some of your physical size in the passing game, I think is going to be a big emphasis for that group in general.
We're talking to Drew Petzing. Trey McBride, I know you just said you want everybody to hit their ceiling and whatever the job is. And I'm not saying he hasn't hit his ceiling yet, or that I'm not saying he has, but like how does he get better? When you look at Trey McBride in the season he had, I mean, it's not just the receiving; he's a good blocker too. Where do you look at a guy like that and say, okay, this is where you need to improve?
I think there's always going to be little things where you could point out, like, hey, did you play perfectly? No, we're never going to. So there's certainly that area. And then I think one of the things that I heard him hit on early in the offseason is consistency.
Yeah.
Is the greats do it for an extended period of time. There's a number of guys that come in the league that have a big year, a big 2 years. The guys that wear gold jackets do it for a decade or more, that's what's really hard, because it's not like a defense doesn't know Trey McBride's a huge part of this offense. He obviously put himself on the map in a major way throughout the last 3 seasons, but I think that's kind of the thing that's the key now is like you have to do it consistently when the looks are harder and people are cluing in on it. You still got to make those plays and create some of that offensive production. So I think that's a big focus.
Drew, are there any trends right now on the defensive side of the ball? Defensive trends in the National Football League that you're seeing be amplified? Are you seeing any of these trends?
I think the two things that, and this has probably been over the last 5 years, you see a lot more personnel groupings on defense. You're seeing not necessarily like, hey, when we put 12 out there, we're getting base defense. When we put 11, we're getting 4 down. You're getting all different variations of nickel. You're getting base to 11. You're getting nickel to 12 or 13. I think to try to create some different leverage and some different fronts and things like that. And then I think you saw, what offenses do, and we talked about this. We check plays at times off of coverage or leverage or different fronts. And I think you're starting to see that more and more from defenses as well, where they're going to check based on formation or motion or certain areas where they're trying to, you talk about the perfect play on offense. I think more people are trying to do that maybe on defense, depending on the system. I think every system's a little different.
Are we going to lead the league in 12 personnel? Are we going to lead the league in 12?
Well, we got to be close, I would think, right?
Gotta be.
I didn't look at the percentages around the league, but I would think
I don't think
there.
we actually led the league, but we were definitely there. So,
there.
yeah, you're saying that is a real possibility.
There's no doubt that tight ends will have a big part in this offense. I don't think that is a secret at this point.
Let's go. Drew, let's line up and hammer
a
somebody.
leading question for sure. He's just leading him to an answer. We're talking to Drew Petzing. Drew, I want to ask you about Trey Benson, and just in a best-case scenario, how do you see him and James Conner playing off each other?
It's so hard because they're both so talented. James has done it at such a high level for us the last 2 years and really throughout his career. But I think Trey has really learned a ton from him his rookie season, just in terms of how to be a pro, how to run with that violence and attitude that we talked about, how to make sure that you're doing the things, in between games to make sure your body's ready to go. So I think it's just continuing to take that process to the next level for Trey that's going to be really important.
Drew, what is your next step? What is the next step for Kyler Murray?
That's a great question. I think like a lot of those guys, the consistency piece is going to be really key. There were times on offense where we felt unstoppable, felt like he was playing at an extremely high level and everything was happening like almost in rhythm on time and really, not perfection, but, felt like we were really humming. And then there were other times where it just felt hard. And some of that's him, some of that's me, some of that's the guys around him. But I think that's really, for a guy of his caliber, it's like, all right, you did it for 8 games last year or 10 games or whatever we want to say it was. Can you up that to 15? You're not going to walk out of a season and say, hey, I had 17 great games very often.
Yes.
But can we push that number closer? I think that's going to be really important.
Now that you've had him for a full season, you had him the full season before he wasn't playing the whole time, but now that you've been able to have him as your starting quarterback, how does that help you and him and just the offense, I guess, kind of try to hit another level this year?
I think it kind of talks to that piece we talked about, like unspoken conversations. Like I think I've gained a better understanding of when he's comfortable, what he likes to see at certain points of the game, where his eyes go and what kind of keeps him in a rhythm. And then he feels more comfortable with me, maybe having some of those conversations and speaking up a little bit more as he's more comfortable in the offense. Whereas before it's like, yeah, I'm not going to question that because I need to try it or I need to feel it or I need to do it. Now, like, hey, he's done most of what we do and what we want to be, so he starts to have more of an opinion on what fits with what defenses he likes it against, and little things like that.
Drew, where are you on the whole? You know what? You need to run the ball a little bit more. Now, again, I don't. This is just me, Drew. I don't like called runs for Kyler Murray. I don't like called runs. Do I like showing it from time to time to keep that defense a little bit honest? Yeah, absolutely. But to me, I'd like to see him pull the ball down a little bit more and run the ball because he's an excellent guy pulling it down and running it. I'd like to see that a little bit more. The ad lib, I guess, from Kyler Murray. Is this something you work with him? And do you agree with that?
To the point of him running more, I think some of that comes up naturally in the game. Some of it's called. I think that can always change. I think to your point, some of that off-schedule stuff is what we've focused on, not necessarily like, hey, I don't want you to throw to the open guy or I don't want to make the right progression, but I think we left plays out there late in the down. Like, I think he did extend some plays, or we had the opportunity to extend plays, and for one reason or another, we didn't hit. It didn't come up the way we needed it to. So we have spent some time this offseason. It's hard because it's off schedule, it's unstructured. I always liken it to like fast break basketball. Like there's a system in place, but at the same time, guys are kind of out there free flowing and playing.
And it's got to be organic.
It has to be. And,
yes.
and you can't just go out there and be like, hey, scramble drill, let's go.
Right.
I mean, you do that here and there to build in the foundation. But I do think if you look throughout his career, he's done that at a really high level. And I felt like last year we left some plays out there.
Fullback in the flat.
Just sneak that in there like he doesn't understand your subtle jabs. Before we let you go, Drew, just with the additions on defense, defense, I mean, obviously you guys are a team. Everything works off the other part. If the defense is as improved as it looks like it could be, what does that do for you guys on offense?
We have to score less points to win. Yeah. No, I joke, but like that, like people said that when throughout the free agency and the draft. At the end of the day, my only goal is to score more points than the other team. And if the other team's scoring less, my job got easier. Like that's a fact, and that's never going to change. And I think that mentality and that attitude has to be so ingrained in who you are as a team to get where we want to go collectively. I think that's really important.
Michael Wilson, what is the net? Where does he need to improve?
Yeah, it's a hard question because he plays at such a high level. He plays so hard. He's so reliable in so many different roles, and his role is multiple. You know, he does a lot of the dirty work in the receiver room. You know, he's still going to be called on in critical passing situations to make some big plays, as you saw him do numerous times. You know, I think that's going to be a big one. I know one thing for him is always the health thing of just trying to stay healthy for every game. I think it was just what he missed the last game of last year. That's always going to eat at him because he strives for perfection. And then I think the big thing for the receiver room in general is winning your one-on-ones. I think that's always going to be something that we focus on. Hey, when it's big zone, I know these guys can run routes and get at the right depth and go get the ball. But when it's press man and it's not always going to be clean, can we kind of have that mentality that we're going to win more than we lose in those situations?
Marvin Harrison Jr. has gotten much thicker and stronger. How's this going to help him on the field?
I think to the kind of the point we were talking earlier, the bigger, there's not a lot of DBs that have that type of size and that length, and being able to use that to his advantage, I think is going to be really important.
Drew, it's always great catching up with you, man. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
Thanks for watching Wolf and Luke. Tap to see more and click the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.